Now, Christmas is a wonderful time, but it can also be a challenging time for some people. And this year has just been quite the year. You know, I think a lot of people have been overwhelmed and even discouraged because of everything going on. And so I think as we think about Jesus, we definitely want to set our eyes on him. That encourages us. But one thing you and I have been looking at, and I think it's definitely worth talking more about, is this idea of our personal health, our well-being, and that includes our physical, emotional, most importantly, spiritual well-being, and how that relates to church attendance.
Yes.
And as we're in this season that we're in, and a lot of people are going through hardships, it's interesting to look at this information. And you sent me even more information, and I will try to share those links as well, because there's a lot of interesting things to look at. But the first one here is the one I talked about recently in a video. Americans' mental health ratings sink to new low, and this is from Gallup. But then when you look at the numbers here from 2019 to 2020, it is really interesting that when you get to religious service attendance weekly, this is the one demographic group that actually describe themselves as doing better in their mental health than anybody else over the last year. So that is really interesting. So I don't know if you have any general feedback you want to give to begin with.
I mean, is air free? Yes, it's free. Yes, I have some general feedback. No, I think this is excellent, because I want to tie it into what you said just a moment ago. This is a time for us to focus on Christ and to be encouraged by the gospel. So if you imagine that going to church on a regular basis, I'm on a steady diet of hearing the word of God, fellowshipping with brothers and sisters of like mind, singing and praying and the such like that during especially 2020. I think there's no reason for me not to expect that this number should have been high. And the fact that it's gone up since last year is only proof positive that church attendance is vital, because it's not just me going to the grocery store or me connecting with my friends at the golf course. No, this is something that is meaningful, and it's not just meaningful because I give it meaning, but because the Lord has given it meaning, and he's called us out to be a part. And I think this solidifies it. And not to steal any of your thunder, but I took some time today just to find some articles that also substantiated that from before this article came out. So looking at 2019, I found one from 2015, and I also found them from sources that were not religious. So places.
Yeah, did you want to mention one of those articles? I can pull it up here.
Oh, I just wanted to give some context before we jump in there.
Yep.
These are articles from unbelievers or from places that probably even now are saying churches should stay closed. But before, they were saying that, church attendance is good. There's one from this year that said it's better for hospital workers to go to church to keep their spirits up as they're working in hospitals with people with COVID.
Yes.
Like, how wild is that? And these are not religious organizations that are saying this.
Oh, here it is. This is actually the headline there. Healthcare workers who attend church services have better mental health.
And that was from this
from
year.
USA Today.
Yeah, they're known for being, all pro religion, and so I just think that it's interesting, since most of our conversation has been around, church lockdown, should people go to church, so on and so forth, and there are countless instances where church attendance is seen as a vital, not only vital, but a key part of people staying mentally strong. There's the article that talks about how depression and suicide numbers went down in people who go to church. Now, am I saying that every church is the same? By no means, but nor did they. So I'm sure they didn't find the most reformed and fundamentalist church that they could find. So even with these people, I'm pretty sure their numbers, you and I will probably find some problems with some of the churches that are probably in the sample.
Mhm.
But even in that, they still give it a thumbs up or a green light that church attendance is key. So imagine if Tim and Jason had done the survey, because we're going to be biased. So we're going to find some churches that we are more keen to.
Right.
Imagine what that number would probably be. So I just think this is a fantastic article to make the point that I think we've made several times, that church is important. It's not just, I think, to say that it's essential is kind of like saying like air. We know it's essential. Like, it is very key to your well-being and your health, not only because we say it, but because God said it.
Amen. And something interesting and a little controversial here is how the groups generally break down. And it says the subgroups showing the greatest declines in excellent mental health are not necessarily the groups with the lowest positive ratings. That is, more Republicans and independents than Democrats say their mental health is excellent, while women rate theirs less positively than men. So that's interesting. That's something, I think I read that in the video too. So it sounds like being a Republican is also positive for your mental health.
I guess we can say that, or independent. So I mean, we can make that
That's
jump
true.
as well.
Or independent. Yes,
Yeah,
that's right. Not Democrat. Yeah. Sorry, I've just defended Democratic individuals that are listening.
Yeah. Please direct all complaints to Tim, please.
Yeah, for this, right? Yes.
That comment.
That's right.
I'll get my own. I have my own comment. I know.
Yeah, I know. And then women also rate theirs less positively than men. So that was interesting. And then of course, lower income, that's not surprising necessarily. Young adults, unmarried, and those who seldom or never attend religious services have the lowest excellent ratings. What a lot of that shows you, though, is just exactly what you were just talking about. Even if you're not talking in theological terms, regardless of the church, it just shows you how important it is to be with other people. And one of the studies that you actually shared with me had to do with, this is from AARP. Mm-hmm. And so this is talking about people that are older. And it says, one possible explanation for the later in life boost that worship seems to bring is that worshiping with others and the increased social and emotional support from one's religious social networks can combat the isolation of living alone. That's important on two levels. One, just people that are older in general can be lonely. So we need that social interaction. But what about right now during COVID? How lonely and isolated are people becoming?
I'll even go one step further. If you pull that back up,
sure.
My mother lives in a senior living apartment, and she comes to church, as I said before in another episode. She comes to church with us every week, and that is a part of her. Now, granted, she has friends, and she plays dominoes with some of her neighbors, and they have cookouts and all that kind of stuff like that. But this is yet another part of her social well-being, is being with people, being with my family, worshiping the Lord together. You cannot minimize it and just put it into a box and say, oh, it's just like going to Walmart or just like going to the golf course. It's not.
Mm. Yep. So it's just interesting. Like you said, you're looking at this information, and whether it's Christian or whether it's secular, there's a lot of indicators pointing to the benefits, the health benefits of being with other people and worshiping. And now there was some pushback on my video, and that had to do with some people were saying this says weekly attendance here, but they said, did the study distinguish, or did the questionnaire distinguish between virtual church versus actually going to church? And obviously, I would grant that there are probably some people who are watching church online that maybe fall under this category. However, the way that it's worded here, it does say religious service attendance, which generally speaking, that indicates people that are actually going to church. But regardless, I would say generally you have to be pretty connected to some group of believers if every single week you're either going or you're watching a service. And that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about being very connected to people and how important that is in terms of our spiritual well-being and in our overall health. And obviously it's important as being a part of the body of Christ.
Absolutely. If you don't mind scrolling up, I thought there was some wording earlier that explained in the beginning portion of the article. I thought there was something here that explained.
I may have missed it. Do you think it was at the beginning of the article? Yeah, it does say here, those who attend religious services less than weekly.
Yeah, I don't see. I'm going with the word attend. I'm gonna hang on that word attend. That to me means I went there. If, for example, if I just call Uber Eats to pick up my kids some food because they're mad I'm not taking them out to eat tonight. If I call Uber Eats, nobody would say I attended Wingstop. It's, I just ordered some food from there. I didn't attend the place. I didn't attend Cookout or wherever they're trying to get me to take them to dinner tonight. Nobody would say that. So I wouldn't use the word attended if it were virtual or went online. I would have used the word. And then you also have to think in 2019, what would have been the terminology? And that might have been what it was that stood out to me. If in 2019, virtual Zoom church was not a thing like it is today. So they would have probably asked, if this was 2019 and they were asking a survey, they would have said, hey, do you go to church weekly or infrequently or whatever? They wouldn't have said, do you clock in on Zoom church?
Yeah, I know. And there are a lot of indicators that we could take that to, generally speaking, meaning that people are going, because even if you compare it to people that are going nearly weekly or monthly or seldom never, it's like, I don't know how many people do virtual church once a month. It seems to me like the same people that are most inclined to go to church are probably very connected to a group of believers, and they might also do virtual church too sometimes. But the general wording here just seems to me to indicate these are people that are probably in most cases actually going to church physically.
Yeah. And even if it were, I feel comfortable in saying that they mean physically. Your physical body is at a physical church location sitting in a pew. I'm pretty certain that's what they meant. But even if it was virtual, I think the point is still there that the corporate worship is vital to it has been shown to give some kind of boost to mental health, even though it is, how do you feel? And you say, excellent. But again, the other documentations that we pull up show that, you know what, there's some real tangible value to corporate worship that you can't just overlook. And I think that's the whole point that I got from it, at least.
Yep. And another one I'll show here that you sent to me was the NPR, VPR. These are very conservative groups, right?
Oh my goodness, NPR. This is, dyed in the wool. They're just serious.
And this was interesting because now this was on almost the other side of the spectrum. I think it said, a new study finds that religion can buffer adolescents against depression. So we already talked about those who are on the older side of the age categories, and now this is talking about people who are on the younger side age-wise.
And this was last year too, right?
Yes, it was.
Yep. I want to make sure it wasn't. So it's not something that we came up with this year.
That's right.
20, like this was what they were saying last year, that this was a benefit. So what we're talking about now, nobody should go to church at all ever again. Well, wait, so don't be surprised when we have children who are depressed. Don't be surprised when we have seniors and elders who are lonely and such like that, because we've closed that place of worship down, and there's no benefit to it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people probably already agree with basically what we're saying, but I know there's always people who do, watch the videos and maybe people that stumble upon some of these videos. And I think generally we're fed in our culture so much on the side of you need to isolate, you need to avoid being around people. And so I think we're trying to bring balance to that. And one thing I keep trying to say over and over is that there's a bigger picture here. Our immunity in relationship to COVID is part of that picture. However, even if you never catch COVID, but you are very isolated, are there other health risks that come as a part of that isolation? And to me, that's very, very serious.
Yes.
I mean, that's why I brought up the study about double. Of course, we all know that loneliness is a very dangerous thing. And, even little children, everybody probably has heard that story in sociology about the babies and the babies in a certain country that didn't have any attention, and they didn't have someone holding them. Those
Right.
babies, just became almost catatonic. They couldn't function correctly. And then as soon as someone took them in their arms and they began to love them, and you have that physical closeness, those babies, begin to just totally transform. And you see that with older people too.
Absolutely.
If you've ever gone to a nursing home and you see people who are in isolation too much, it is tragic. But then when you begin to interact with them and give them physical touch and love them and sing with them, they transform.
And I think neither of us are saying that it's a magic pill, but I think it is such a vital point that you cannot overlook it. And that's what I believe all these articles are kind of solidifying. So when we look at and we're listening to, don't go to church, stay isolated, so on and so forth, you have to realize that there's going to be some negatives from that, and that's something we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just, everything is really this balancing situation, which I think is why people get upset. And I see it a lot in the interactions. And something that I'm going to throw out there to all of this is a thought that I had recently about how we can so often look at things because we have a certain level of fear. And what I've noticed is that you have some people that are really fearful of their safety. They're fearful about what's going to happen to them if they or a loved one catches COVID-19. But I've noticed that there are a lot of other people who are fearful about losing freedom, right? And both of those, and so when we have fear, we react very strongly. I mean, fear is a very powerful motivator, and I think the reason people get so upset is because of these different fears that are coming out. And for some people, the greatest fear is more on the side of safety. On other people, it's the greatest fear is on the side of losing their freedom. And there's truth in both.
Oh yeah. There's, by no means are we saying that one is better than the other, or one is fictitious or anything of that nature. It's just, we you're talking about freedoms. I know people who have lost businesses and jobs and such like that. And those aren't, those, you can't get those back either. So just knowing, we need to be willing to hear everyone's side and give Tim, give Jason, give Sally, give Jane the opportunity to voice what are their fears, and are they valid? Are they real fears? Or are they just fears that have been ginned up because you're watching too much news? Are you fearful of whatever? But and I think by just shutting down discussion, say, no, you cannot, your fears are completely invalid, Tim, and therefore you cannot be at this discussion. You have completely I think that only shows not only that you respect and honor a person, but also gives them an opportunity to maybe for themselves come to realize, I was afraid of this, or I was fearful of this, and I really shouldn't be, or maybe I was too cavalier. Now I better understand it, whatever. But there's value in it, and I don't think we're appreciating everybody's side or opinion, and especially not if we just shut them down and say you can't.
Yeah, I agree, and it's hard. We're all human, and we all have our feelings and our vantage point, and I think sometimes we don't even realize how strongly we feel until something kind of sparks it. And I think COVID-19 has just sparked a lot of feelings, and that again includes, and I think it's perfectly legitimate when I hear someone fearful about losing their freedom. I don't live in California, but I've talked a lot about California. And that's because I can understand where a lot of these, their churches, there's a lot of restrictions out there.
Yeah, they are.
There's a lot of restrictions out there. And, in New Hampshire, as long as we can get through the snow and actually get to church, we don't have as many restrictions.
Right. How many feet of snow did you get today?
It was, I think 3 feet or maybe more. And it was an unusually large storm. Even by New Hampshire standards, it was a big storm.
Gotcha. Wow. I'm glad you all are safe. But no, I think, and I will even go as far to say maybe not even just COVID-19, but I just think 2020 has just been a complete emotional wreck for a lot of us. So therefore, the idea, and you just keep piling on stuff, but then you put on this, I can't go to church, I can't get those kind of interactions with people. You can't go to work, you can't go to the gym, you're doing all these things through Zoom and so forth. And it's just it's not the same. I don't think we should ever look at it like, oh, it's just the same. That's not the case at all. So
yeah. And there's a lot of things that feed into it too, because we have a whole infrastructure and a media system that its whole basis of operation is, and we've talked about it before, I think, the news makes money off of us, getting riled up about things, and so it just adds to our angst.
You're 100% correct.
And also pitting people against each other. It's hard. It's hard enough for humans to get along. And then when you have news people wanting us to be at odds with each other.
No argument for me at all. No argument whatsoever.
All right. Well, this has been good. And I hope that everybody listening, is encouraged. And, I know that when I do videos, maybe I'm talking about something like tonight and there are people who don't agree, but I just appreciate that we can talk about things like this. And, I hope that people do come to maybe understand things. Again, if you're on the side of, I think everybody should take COVID really seriously and we need to be more locked down. I hope that something we talked about tonight would just remind people that we can take things too far. And it could be in the direction of overemphasizing the dangers of COVID or the need to isolate. But we could also say, yeah, we can become overly fearful or suspicious of losing our freedoms to the point where we buck against everything the government says. And we know in scripture that we should have a submissive posture toward government as much as possible.
As much as possible. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I agree with you fully.